Yo, what's going on? It's your boy Kuya P of the ShoPowSho. Before we get to this week's episode of the ShoPowSho, I want y'all to check out this amazing festival that I'll be collaborating with my folks over at the Mixed Asian Media Festival. Here we go right now. Check it out.
In 2017, we launched Hapa Mag, inspired by my blog, Miso Hapa.
For many of us, it has come to represent a space for us to express our mixed racial heritage with Asian or Pacific Islander ancestry.
To be Hapa is to be a part of a diverse and growing community with many perspectives.
In 2021, we made the decision to move to a broader future by renaming ourselves Mixed Asian Media, MAM for short.
In celebration of this re-identification, we present the first Mixed Asian Media Fest, MAM Fest, a glimpse of Mixed Asian and Pacific Islanders in their art forms, including art, film, theater, and dance.
In light of recent events, MAMFest will be an online event. However, we're hopeful that future years will allow us to meet in person and gather in physical space.
And have a creative project? Submit to MAMFest on filmfreeway.com.
Yo, what's going on? It's the NOC, the Nerds of Color, and we are back with another ShoPowSho. I am Kuya P, aka Patrick Michael Strange, the Babinka boy, the Holla Holla homie, and the Cinna Gang member of the Tocino, also Tocino Terminator, but I got the Dinaguan Destroyers, the Lechon ladies, because I can't do this by myself, the amazing Ates, Cataphoric, and Viva Valentina. What's up, ladies?
What's up?
Patrick.
You forgot a dobro.
Oh yeah, the Adobe. I was one of them.
Yo.
I was trying to remember them because we're trying to get our.
We're adding titles,
Yes.
Daenerys,
I got a new one for y'all.
Dragons,
that I haven't dropped in the regular show. I did it when I recorded episode with OG Moose, another episode of ShoPowSho. Sisig Supreme.
Ooh.
Did y'all like Sig?
I like that.
I like that.
A play off of Doctor Strange and Sorcerer Supreme. So yeah, Sisig Supreme, because again, we're going to try and get our merch line up for ShoPowSho. All of our love for food and nerd culture. It's going to be, I'm in the works, people. It's going to happen. But great to have you, Cataphoric, Viva Valentina, for another episode. We've been looking forward to this episode so long. We've finally made it happen. We've had, I've been hitting up Budjette. We're trying to make it work. He's all the way coming from Denmark, and we're so excited to have him. So let's just get it going on. Let's have it rolling. The creator of Trese is coming to Netflix. He's got a bunch of amazing works. There he is on the screen. Budjette Tan, air horns. We are so excited. So excited. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Thank you for persisting.
Yes.
I am such a forgetful guy.
No worries. We know you're a superstar now, man. Brush those shoulders off. You're in demand.
I am in demand with my 4-year-old. That's what it's happening.
Oh, that's so cute.
So yeah, that he has blocked off, all free time.
That's amazing. That's very important. As creatives, it's all about, weighing the creativity time and the family time. I know how that is, having a young one myself. So you are a superstar father for doing that. So props to you. We, again, thank you for your time. We know you're coming all the way from Denmark, and so we don't want to keep you up too late to do this. So we're going to just get the ball rolling. I'm going to toss it to Miss Viva Valentina with our first question out the gate. Here we go.
So we always want to know, where are you from? But where are you really from? And where are your parents from?
Okay. I grew up in Quezon City. My dad is from Bacolod. And funnily enough, I only got to visit Bacolod when I was already a couple of years ago. So I wish I could have called it my hometown. And my mom is from Manila as well.
Awesome.
But I guess I just want to say as well, with that question, I grew up in Quezon City, but when I was a baby, we used to stay in Parañaque. And my mom said that we lived in a haunted house.
And that's
oh my gosh.
the story that we were looking at. Well, I know from your bio, I'm so curious, and I know the Ates are curious.
I love haunted house stories.
Some of
I
that
love
kind of
those
led to
stories.
Trese.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Do you remember anything from it?
Thankfully, no. Thankfully.
I wouldn't want to either.
So happy that I do not remember any of it happening, because if I did, I would probably be a wreck right now. So really quickly, so I was still a baby, maybe 6-7 months old. We had moved into the house, and it's in Merville. I don't know if if you know any people from Merville. The house is still there. I visited it. I did not go in, but I just wanted to check that all the stories were real, right?
Oh my God.
But so we moved, and typical Filipino family. It was me, my mom, dad. And then we had my uncles and cousins staying over as well. Anyway, so your typical haunted stuff would happen. Lights would switch on and off. They would hear voices coming from rooms, and then when they go there, there's nobody there. And at one point, my uncle woke up at 3 a.m. to go to the toilet, and he saw his slippers walking away from him.
Oh my
God.
Okay. The house had a swimming pool, and at again, at midnight, obviously it's always happens at midnight. They woke up because there was a sound coming from the pool, and when they woke up, there was tidal waves on the pool. Right? None of all of these things happened around my mom. Nothing happened to her, so she didn't believe any of the stories. So she said one afternoon she had given me a bath, put me on the bed. She turned around to get my clothes, and when she looked at me, she said half of my face had wrinkled out, and I looked like an old man.
Oh my God.
And then all of the stories just came rushing back to her, and she realized it's true. The house is haunted, and something just possessed my child. So the only thing she could think of doing was she slapped me.
Oh my God. I love this.
She slapped me, and then supposedly I didn't cry. I just stared back at her. And so that's when she got down to her knees, started to pray. She grabbed the rosary, just, prayed until I returned to normal. Which probably explains why, as a kid, she would just slap me whenever I would say something. It's You're possessed. And like, no, that was the only time she ever slapped me. Thank God. But anyway, so they had to conduct a seance in the house. They called for a psychic. They did the whole, let's hold hands, light a candle bit. And they discovered that the house was still haunted by an old man who used to own the house. And years ago, he was evicted from the house. So he died thinking that he still owned it.
Oh my God.
Oh, and he just went home. Oh man.
So
we need the Budjette Tan story. Like, we need this now. This needs to be your next project. We need the bio projects, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, so there, more stuff happened around the house, but I was like, we only have an hour.
Yeah.
So like, what made you guys move out? Like, did you guys just leave, or was it?
I think we stayed a bit longer. After the seance, the house became quiet, thankfully. But I think we stayed a bit longer, and eventually we just needed to move to be closer to my dad's work. I think that's the reason why we ended up in Quezon City later on. And yes, so thankfully we did not move to any haunted house after that.
One and done. That's my haunted house policy too.
Wow.
I like, that's so cool. Like, you're like, oh, cool, it's a haunted house. I love ghost stories, but like, I would never. That would not be me. I could never.
You don't even like horror movies. Like, this is not the life for you.
So I keep telling my friends, your parents would have the typical stories of like, oh, when Budjette was, this small, he did this really cute thing. I grew up listening to stories of my mom saying, oh, when Budjette was 6 months old, he got possessed. He got possessed, and I slapped him, and it's. And for me, that's like, oh, this is normal. This happens to people on an everyday basis. No, it turns out it doesn't. So it's like. And it was my dad who would tell me, it's bedtime. There's an aswang outside the window. If you get off the bed, he will eat you. The aswang will eat you. So
I gotta steal that one.
So that was my household. My mom was like saying there are ghosts in the house. My dad saying there's aswang outside of the house. Where do you go?
Nowhere safe.
Wow.
I'm sure Trese is, I think this is me processing that from.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's
art imitates life, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure your next question is, where do you get all your great ideas? You have a great imagination. It's not. It's true.
It's life story.
All true.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that. That is amazing. So if we can, what else would they tell us? Or what would your parents tell us about a young Budjette? From baby beyond the possession,
growing up,
from baby to high school, what would they say you were into? What would you not? Well, actually, what would you not want? What would you think? What would you not want them to tell us that you're you're afraid they'd say?
Yeah, they would. Actually, they would tell you. So here's the other favorite thing my mom tells people, that when I was, I guess, kindergarten, I had strangled a classmate with a balloon.
Oh my God.
Were you also possessed? Was that
was it the old man?
Yeah. I blame the old man.
Yes.
I think, and yeah, I do feel the spirit of the old man. I was an old man at 5 years old. I think I was a grumpy old man. So as the story goes, my mom gets a call from the principal. She comes and she says, "Oh, your son had a fight with a fellow classmate and had wrapped the string of the balloon around the other kid." And then my mom said, "Why did you do that?" And I said, well, it was my balloon and he wanted it and he didn't want to let go. So I gave it to him.
Wow, you sure did.
I became nice. I became much nicer after that incident.
That is like gangster.
All right. Yeah.
Like
so okay, so that's amazing.
No, but aside from that, like a typical 80s kid, I was stuck in front of the TV set. My dad was in television, so he would bring home on VHS tapes and on Betamax tapes shows that he wanted to buy from America and then show in the Philippines.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So we got to watch episodes of like G.I. Joe and Transformers before anyone else got to watch it. He was the one that brought Sesame Street to the Philippines.
Oh wow!
So we were TV kids. So if other kids were told to not watch TV, it was my dad's business. We had no choice but to watch with him. He brought in a lot of anime in the Philippines. But I think I don't know if you're familiar with those robot shows like Balatak and Jig and Vanguard Ace.
Yeah.
Most Pinoys, of course, we all grew up loving Voltes 5. But yeah, so those are the shows we got to watch as kids back home.
Awesome. So with that,
so you were the Nielsen box. Like he showed you shows, and you were like, "Oh, I like this," and it's like, "Bet." Like,
yes, you're absolutely right.
A lot of power.
That was the test. We were the test audience.
That's beautiful. Cool. Awesome. So with that being said, did that with watching TV and being the Nielsen box, as Kat said, was that spurning your creativity early on? That would be the fruits of later on?
Yeah, I think I made my first comic book around that age, around when I was in grade school. And it was one of those, and because, there was no internet, there were 5 channels on TV. What else could you do? So I grabbed some paper at home, I stapled it together, got a pencil pen, and I made my first comic book. And my superhero was called Cosmic Man, which was patterned after, he was like Space Ghost and Batman mashed up into one.
Nice.
So he was Cosmic Man with a cosmic ship, and he had a cosmic gun that fired a cosmic net. It's very original.
I want to see that on Netflix.
I hope so. I hope they buy it. I've been pitching it. No one knows.
Hey, we're the target audience, Netflix. Okay. We're Cosmic Man.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wrote 25 cents on the cover because that's what my other comic book said. And then I go to my mom and I said, "Mom, I made the comic book. Will you buy it for 25 cents? And she gives me 25 cents. She reads it. After she reads it, I take it and I go to my dad. And then I sold it to him for 25 cents. So it was sold out in a day.
First edition printing sold out.
Wow. Hustle.
I love it.
Right.
I learned the art of hustling way back then. But there, so yeah, I mean, and I kept doing that, and I think in grade school was when I met friends who will become my lifelong friends, and we were bonded by comics.
That's beautiful.
We were the kids in the back of the class, exchanging comics. Back then, of course, such things were, prohibited in school, and that's not literature, kind of lectures that you get. But there, yeah, and that's where the comic book addiction started.
I love it. Another thing we ask about the early stages of life, and being that myself, Kat, and Tina are all mestizos. We're Hapas, and we grew up in the U.S. And so we wanted to do this show so we can get closer to our culture. With you growing up in the Philippines, what was that like for you growing up Filipino in the Philippines? learning that you're, part of this amazing culture and your history, but then also seeing stuff coming from the West and the US. What was that like for you, and seeing those differences, and also celebrating your culture? Or did you love your culture? Because there's some people that, kind of didn't, they wanted to become American. What was that like for you growing up in the Philippines?
Yeah, I would still remember, our uncle's joke about, we should just become the 52nd state of America, so we would have snow, so snow would start falling.
That works.
I believed it. No, it was it. I must say, I love to say that I'm a Sesame Street kid, but it was, and if and probably not. I was about to say, if you remember in the 80s, you were probably born in the 80s. The 80s was an interesting time in the Philippines because majority, like 90% of what you see on TV, like 70%, especially prime time, is in English. Mm-hmm. And we were dominated by American TV shows. So it was a mix of some channels were predominantly American TV shows. And then you had your mix of Filipino shows. But we were also at an interesting crossroads because we were getting shows from Japan. We were, way before Power Rangers happened, we were getting, Star Rangers and all of these other live action Japanese shows. I will mess up the Japanese name, but we had the live action version of Lone Wolf and Cub airing in the Philippines, and it was dubbed in Tagalog. Wow. So it was strange, seeing the Japanese actors, speaking in Tagalog. But I guess that was normal for us. So for me, I think I at least personally, I feel that I am at that I'm at that comfortable crossroads of enjoying cultures, enjoying getting input, getting entertained by stuff from the West, stuff from Japan, as well as absorbing, enjoying the things that I pick up from my family, the stories that I learned from my family, and I think that helped me eventually produce this kind of story that we're now doing. Most definitely, I think American comics is what made me look to the West and go, that's where I want to go, because it felt like. Admittedly, Tagalog comics at the time for me was something I didn't have access to, and the few that I got didn't really spark my imagination. But I did get a book from my dad, which was called The History of Filipino Comics and Other Countries. And it was my first time to see the works of Filipino comic book artists from the 60s and 70s. So we're talking about Nestor Redondo, Alfredo Alcala. And that was my first time to see such beautiful artwork, that felt like they needed to be put in galleries and museums. I was so struck by the fact that it mentioned there, I think it was Alcala who was given an award by a European graphic novel association.
Yep.
And I was just like going, didn't he get recognized for his work here? I mean, in the Philippines? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think he did, but it was like, wow, this work, traveled, around the globe. But the works of Alcala and Redondo, we were not the type, the Philippine comic book industry was not the type to reprint it, turn it into graphic novels or trade paperbacks. There, you could not access, previous work. It was so hard to access back issues. You could not go to a comic book store and go through the back issue bin. That did not exist. So the few comics, Tagalog comics that ended up my way were the ones that I was like, this is interesting, but why, the paper was flimsy, the coloring was bad. But I kept reading it anyway because, I was the type of kid that would read anything that I could get my hands on. But yeah, going back to comics, it was in the 80s that Phil Bars opened. And Phil Bars is one of the oldest comic book stores in the Philippines. They were the ones that brought Will Sportasio to Manila when he became famous for Uncanny X-Men. Mm-hmm. And Uncanny X-Men. That was pre-Image days.
Oh yeah.
And Will's coming home to the Philippines was one of those eye-opening moments of like, he's Filipino.
Yeah.
And again, it just made us realize, a Pinoy got in Marvel. A Pinoy is now drawing our favorite mutants,
Yeah.
And much later on, it was like little things that Wills did, like putting the Philippine flag on the back of Colossus' jacket.
Yeah.
And it even had Makulit written on the back of the jacket. So I think it was these little things that Wills would do and go, yeah! It's like, we know that. Do you know that? I it's an interesting question, but I think looking back, I was just the type of kid that absorbed whatever was on TV or whatever was on a printed page, and that's how I continued to look at my culture growing up. We are one of my favorite examples about what is Pinoy comics. I mean, we are just like in the same manner that the Americans left the Jeep in World War II and we converted it into jeepneys. We got the comic book medium and we twisted it and reverse engineered it and made it our own. I mean, at first glance, someone can easily say, Darna is a rip-off of Wonder Woman. She's not.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call this? Ravelo took that template. Mars Ravelo took that template. And he's never mentioned this in interviews, but here's my guess on the how did he make it more Pinoy? The whole concept of swallowing a stone to give you power, that comes from the folklore of the mutya. And the mutya is a stone of power found in the puso ng saging, in the heart of in the flower of the banana tree. And you are only supposed to get that. You are supposed to wait underneath the banana tree, wait for the full moon, and at midnight, the puso ng saging is supposed to open up. And then that stone will drop to the ground and you're supposed to catch it. And then you catch it and it's supposed to be a white stone. And if you swallow it, it gives you strength. It gives you powers.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, he put it under the guise, he said it was sci-fi because he then said, this stone fell from the sky and it came from another planet. And this little girl named Narda found it and she swallows the stone and she becomes Darna. Right? So I mean, he was, just like the Jeep. He had the basic framework of what a comic book is, and then he started to put his own design and thinking around it, putting his own culture on top of that.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's ours.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that I think that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh yeah, you definitely are, and I can't thank you enough for that. I appreciate the walk through Philippine comics history because I know a lot of what you said. To me, Nestor Redondo, Alfredo Alcala are idols, and just how instrumental Filipinos have been to the comics industry for many years. And so I really appreciate that. And you Budjette, you're one of those people as well. that are carrying that torch. And I can't thank you enough for doing that for us as a community and us as a people. So let's go to getting ready to go to university. So that way we can get into some of these other amazing points of your life. Here in the States, and I'm sure there in the Philippines as well, you know, we kind of get pressured to not follow our creative roots. They want us to go doctor, lawyer, accountant, you know, the good paying jobs. What was that? Did that happen to you with your parents? Or what was that like in going into university life?
These are very good questions. Let me think about that.
Yeah, were you pressured to go a certain route? You were very creative. You were selling your dad they for 25 cents comic books.
Right.
So there was
it
hustle
seemed like
there.
you were very supportive of you doing the art and doing the comics early on. So interested to see like where you went with it.
Yeah. I'm really trying to think back. I definitely had my own choice of the course that I took. Was there a pressure to go somewhere specific? I think they were just happy if I passed a test in a university. But definitely getting into Ateneo was a big plus because it was closer to home. Again, my dad was a TV broadcaster. He was a businessman, and he loved finding shows. He loved creating shows. I mean, there was a period of time he was in charge of one of the local networks and was developing. He worked behind the scenes and developed a lot of the shows that ended up on air. So yeah, I don't think I ever got the talk. I don't think I ever got the "you must take this course," young man. But somehow I thought, because he had his own business, and I guess in the back of my head, I knew that he wanted us to somehow learn it. So what I did was I discovered. But I thought, when I grow up, I want to be a writer. I want to be a comic book writer, right? And there's no such course, right, in college. I did discover that Ateneo had something called the interdisciplinary studies. And it allowed you to combine 2 or 3 different disciplines, and that's what you focus on. So the extreme example of this, I heard of one student who combined chemistry and literature. That was her. So in effect, you made your own course. Is how it was designed. And I thought, okay, so that I could learn to prepare myself for what my dad does. Half of my electives were all about communications. So it was a communications course, and for my own sake, I took literary courses, that was the other half. So I learned, I took courses on like the basics of communication, and I learned how to do, how to make a radio program, how to edit. And back then, this is still linear editing, those big U-matic tapes that you put, and then you're fiddling around with the with the knobs just to edit your video, not like what we can do now. So I learned that part of it, and then in my literature course, wherever I could possibly insert the topic of comics, I will write about comics.
That's beautiful.
And when it got to thesis time, I needed to write a paper that combined the two. I was able to convince my mentor that I should write a thesis paper about Neil Gaiman's Sandman.
Oh, wow.
And
awesome.
and he let me.
And then the fact that you got a quote from him later on, looking at some of the quotes in regards to Trese, that's amazeballs.
That's like full circle.
Yeah, that's like amazing.
I mean, I've been a big fan. I've been whenever possible, I would email him. what do you call this? When he did come to Manila, the interesting thing is he came to Manila twice. And on the first time he went to Manila, back then Trese was just a photocopied comic book, right? So again, I tried to sell it to him for 25 cents. He didn't want to buy it, so I just gave it to him. But it was a photocopied comic book. So I gave it to him and I said, thank you for the inspiration. And, that was the only thing that I could say to him. The second time he came back, the Trese was already published. And I lined up again along with the thousands of other people who lined up. And then I finally gave him the published book. And he, later on, he sent me a postcard. It was like a handwritten, it's like I don't understand I don't understand what's written on this postcard. And I started to realize, it's from Neil Gaiman, saying thank you for the book. And then, it was, I think that quote from him that ended up in the book was his reply to me when I told him we won our first National Book Award.
Wow.
So Trese won for Best Graphic Novel of the Year. And I just had to say, thank you, Dream God.
Wow. That is, oh my gosh, that is beautiful. I love it. Before we go further, I want to stop for a second and say pro tip, life lesson. I want to start incorporating these more into our ShoPowShos. So at this point in your life, what is a pro tip for a viewer watching this episode right now? Life lesson that you want to impart to them that you learned that you would want to give to them at this point in your life?
I guess it would be that whatever goal you have, whatever that impossible dream that you have, all it takes is actually an hour a day to get to it. And I say that because that's exactly how me and Kajo made Trese, as well as a ton of other projects. But I think mostly with Trese, it was we decided to block off 1 hour of our day. Kajo was more strict about it. I wasn't. He's the more disciplined one between me and him. But to block off time and just say, for this hour, I will do this thing that I've always wanted to do.
I love that.
And sometimes it might not even be the thing that will, it doesn't necessarily mean this is going to be your next big novel. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be this is going to be the film that will win the Oscars or whatever. I think the important thing is on that hour, you are doing that thing for yourself.
Yes.
And just enjoy it. Because the rest of the time, everything outside of that hour is most probably devoted for someone else. Whether it's your boss, whether it's your client, whether it's your audience, or your 4-year-old kid who's demanding more popcorn, somewhat it's you give that time you for the people you love and the people you serve.
Yes.
But for that 1 hour, it's okay to be selfish and just do this thing for yourself. And it's highly possible the rest of the world will never see that thing that you're doing, but at least you've done it. You created something, and you're happy with it. And if you're brave enough, then go share it. And later on, you look back and you go, oh, I've already spent X amount of hours and I have a book or I have a film, or I have a whatever it is, and then go share it.
There you go. That is tremendous. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Budjette. Okay, back to the story. I hope the Ates love that, because that's something I've been thinking about incorporating now. Just an amazing life lesson, and hopefully all the people watching now will take that, because that was so beautiful. So we're in college, and like you said, you kind of did classes that would be good for you because you wanted to be a writer, and then you were taking the courses for your father because he kind of wanted you to sort of, without saying, follow in his footsteps. So we graduate college. What is Budjette doing to then get closer to this goal of being a writer, and leading us into where you're making photocopies? That amazing story when I read that you made, photocopy stories to get this Trese off the ground. Can we talk on that post college, trying to become a writer?
Yeah. So my dad was really patient with me, and he did not. I don't think I ever heard him say, "Oh, now you've graduated. Come start. You need to start working now." So I think he gave me enough time to try and figure out my way, and until I figured out, I need to start working for my dad now. But what happened was, two things happened. One was Wills came back to the Philippines. This was a year before I graduated, I think. Yes, that's right. A year before, or maybe a year after. So what happened was, sorry, just to backtrack again. As I was graduating college, my mom and dad agreed that my graduation present was I would get to attend San Diego Comic Con. Right?
What a great present. The Comic Con.
So I was thinking, do I go there as a fanboy, which is fine, or do I go there and try to break in? Right? And by this time, we had received rejection letters from Atlas and Gasi, which are the Filipino comic book companies. We had been rejected by Marvel, DC, and by Wildstorm. So rejection. And then we thought, well, look at those Image guys. They're doing their own thing. We should do our own thing. So I got my friends together and I said, let's make our own comic book. We printed 1,000 copies thinking that it would be sold out in a day. I don't know if we should have sold it for 25 cents, but we printed 1,000 copies. I brought 100 copies, I think, to San Diego. I met with editors, and I met Wills. I got to meet Wills in San Diego Comic Con. Gave him a copy of the comic book. Months later, I don't know if it was the same year or a year after, Wills comes back to the Philippines, and through a friend, through Jerry Alangilan, I get a call from Jerry saying, Wills is in town and he wants to meet with local comic book creators. And Wills meets up with us, and he gave us the fantastic advice, which is essentially how they made Image. He said, instead of competing with one another, and we were like, 10, 12 different, we were comic book studios, which meant we were 2 or 3 guys with a desk drawing somewhere, right? He said, instead of competing with one another, why don't you come together, have one name, one logo, put it on the cover of your comic book, and every time that comic book comes out, people see that this is what Pinoy comics is all about. And that's how Alamat Comics was formed. But the funny thing is, we called ourselves the #1 comic book company because we only released issue 1 of a comic book and never got to release issues 2 and 3 because issue 1 never sold enough. So we were bad businessmen, bad. But we kept doing that. We kept doing that for maybe, 2-3 years, I think. But Alamat became more of like a community. It wasn't a business. I I think it succeeded more as starting a comic book community rather than a comic book business. If I could travel back in time, I would have like dragged along some business manager to say, "Here, why don't you gather these kids and give them guidance?" But I met really good friends, and that's where I met Kajo Baldisimo. So Kajo was he was working in one of the studios where we would hang out in, and of course, to make money, we were on the lookout for freelance work. So once in a while, we would get a client saying, "Oh, can you draw us a poster? Oh, can you make a comic book about computer viruses?" Or like one job I got, "Can you make a comic book about AIDS and how to prevent it?" So I'd be looking around, who can draw this comic book with me? And usually Kajo would say yes to the project. So that's how me and Kajo started to develop this working relationship. The other thing, that Wills comes home, right? The second thing that happened was, since the comic book was not making money, I needed to find a regular job. And suddenly we found, a friend said, "I saw a wanted ad for a new radio station." So a new radio station had opened up, and their bright idea was, we will be talk radio. This is like the 1990s, okay? Yeah. So they said, for 1 hour, all you need to do is talk about one topic. And we were all going, who the heck's gonna listen to people talking for an hour?
Now look at us, podcasting.
But the station shut down. It was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Because no sponsor. I mean, we got like 1 or 2 sponsors, but it was like, where's the music? So but it was, I mean, looking back now, it was interesting how they structured the whole station into different hours. And I don't know, my running joke is it was because we were the last ones to enter the office and got accepted. We got the late night slot. So we got like the 9 to 10 time slot. And the programming director said, "Okay, it's late at night. Why don't you do a 1-hour talk show about the supernatural?" Right? And then, but again, that running thought, an hour of just talking about the supernatural? That's gonna be the most boring thing. Yeah. So my friend Mark Gatella was the one who said, "Let's divide the hour into 4 segments." And so we had a segment about witchcraft. We had a segment about legendary monsters from other countries, right? I keep forgetting what the third one was. Oh, the third one was the comedy bit. He was like a bumbling explorer. He was like a comedic Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And the first hour, the first 15 minutes of the time block was urban ghost stories. So me and Mark were like our big fans of Twilight Zone, Stephen King, Tales from the Crypt, and we said, let's do our own version but set it in Manila. So, and because we were big fans of those shows, and Twilight Zone had Rod Serling, or that, that disembodied narrator at the beginning and end, right? Tales from the Crypt had Crypt Keeper. We needed a narrator that started and ended each ghost story. And Mark said, the name of our narrator is Anton Trese. Okay, so, and I said, so who is he? And he said, it doesn't matter. He's just the guy who knows all of these stories, right? So every episode, it would begin with like, good evening, I am Anton Trese. Tonight, we will go to Quezon City, where, and he would like tell you what happens, right? So we wrote 30 episodes of that. So me and Mark took turns writing the episodes. He was the producer, meaning he was the guy at the soundboard pressing record and stuff and play music. Cassette tape. This was on cassette tape, mind you.
Oh my God.
And I was the voice of Anton Trese.
Wow.
So this was 95, around 95. And then I love the name. When Mark showed me the first script, the name just stuck to me. I mean, it felt like, it had that same mystery and charm as John Constantine, or as, Fox Mulder. It felt like it had there was something magical about the name. But after we wrote the 30 episodes and the station shut down, we forgot about Anton Trese.
Wow.
Until, cut to 10 years later, 2005, me and Kajo were already working for an ad agency. Excuse me. So we were working in, our offices were just like one block apart. He was working for McCann, which is the big ad agency, and I was working for Harrison, which is the sister company. And we would still, communicate, and every time there was a sideline, a racket to be done, I would toss it his way. And one day he just sends me a message and says, "Budge, gawa tayo ng comics. Let's make a comic book. Let's make a monthly comic book." Was what he texted me. And if you guys have worked in an ad agency or have friends in an ad agency, you don't see these friends because they work in an ad agency.
Yeah.
So I told Kajo, and by this time, again, we did other comics which failed. I'd done my comics, he did his comics. So when he sent me that message and I looked at it, my first reply was, I said, "That's impossible. We do not have time to make a monthly comic book." Kajo then replied to me and he broke down his process. He said, "Here's my plan." And he sent it to me as a text message. He said, "If you can give me a 20-page script, I will draw 1 page a day. So by the end of 20 days, we would have a 20-page comic book. And for the next 10 days after that is when we put in the script, the word balloons, edit whatever needs to be edited." And he said the cover will always use an image from inside the book, so he doesn't need to draw the cover. So he mapped it out in his head on how it could be done. And he said, "I will spend my lunch breaks drawing this page," is what he said.
Wow.
So he would. So if you go to McCann on a lunch break, he would be there with a sandwich in one hand and drawing with the other hand. Right. Wow. So I said, "I still think it can't be done." and he said, "Give me a script." So I dug up an old script. So cutting back a bit. Before 2005, even though I had comic books that failed, the itch to write a comic book was still there. So I said, "I want to write a comic book. This is for nobody. It's not to be pitched for anyone. I just want to write again. I just want to write a story again." So I remembered Anton Trese. And I remembered getting scared by the White Lady of Balete Drive growing up. And I thought, okay, I want to write about why is the White Lady of Balete Drive haunting that street. That's the story I want to tell. And I had written different versions of this and I could never end it. Because I always was trying to project myself into like, oh, this is going to be like a 100-page epic graphic novel and it's going to be fantastic. And I couldn't get past page 2, right? So that script went to my bottom drawer until Kajo sent me that text and he said, "Give me any script." So I dug up the Anton Trese script and I sent him a page. And I said, "Okay, here's a page." And in 1 hour, he emails me back that page of Anton Trese, like fighting an aswang, right? And I was like looking at that page and I was like, oh, wow, he did it in an hour. I think it's possible. But then something clicked in my head and I said, here's Anton Trese. You've got another tough guy, square-jawed, punching aswang. And it just felt like, we've seen so much of this before. And I said, what haven't we seen? And then I texted Kajo back. I said, Kaj, what if Trese was a woman? And Kajo said, that would be so badass. Like 10 or 13 exclamation points. And within the same day, he emails me a sketch of this woman just, she's got this staring at you and she's already got the haircut. And I said, okay, that's Alejandro. Yeah. Yes, with the haircut, with the devil's haircut. I said, that's Alejandro Trese. And because Kajo said you need to end it in 20 pages, then for me, it suddenly freed me up. That whole notion of like a 100-page epic, throw that out the window. And in my head, it's like, because he had given me a deadline and he had given me guardrails, it actually freed me up to tell a story. So I have a lot of Trese scripts where it will just ramble. And then when I start to cut it up into pages, I'd say, oh, it's 30 pages. Time to cut it down. And somehow it helped. So I finished the script. I sent it to him. True enough, every single day, he emails me a page. And by the end of the 20 days, he says, where's the next script? I was like, oh, we're really doing this now.
I love that. I love that story. Like that first Trese story, I love it so much. And I'm already predisposed. I love like episodic noir anyway. And then having like a female character who isn't overly sexualized. She's already well respected. I love the way that the captain treats her with respect from the jump. I think that's amazing. But what I really appreciated about that story in particular is just it's such a female focused story between the ghost being a woman and Alexandra being a woman. And then, of course, other female characters who are important. I don't want to say because everybody should go read Trese if you haven't. But I just was really, it was a really empathetic story that still had so much action. And I just, it was a winner from right off the bat for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you for saying that. It's it always surprises us to hear readers coming back to us saying how much it also how much they felt about it. And Kajo, I mean, one of the things that Kajo told me, which I keep reminding myself, especially when we got to the point when the offers started to come in for Trese. There was one time I told Kajo, "Oh, Kaj, we got rejected again." There was an offer we were trying to pitch it to be a movie. It was supposed to be a live action movie, and it got rejected. And he said to me, "Well, whatever happens, we've always got the comic book." And he said that when we write, he told me the two people he doesn't think about anyone else when he draws Trese. He says the only two people he thinks about is Budjette and Kajo. He says, is this page going to make me happy? Is this page going to surprise Budjette? So yeah, it's and one of my favorite reactions from the Trese story, and if you've read book 1, it's A Secret Constellation. When it came out, this guy comes up to me at the Comic-Con with a K, by the way, Comic-Con in Manila. Guy comes up to me like he's bigger than me, and he says, "I hate you." And I said, "Oh," and I was starting to think, what did I do? Did I offend anyone? And he says, "I hate you," and he said, "You made me cry," and he like holds up the comic book. It was that story. It was that story.
Wow.
But there, so I mean, we are. It just we started to tell the story for ourselves, not knowing where it would go, And just to kind of echo back to the whole selling your comics for 25 cents, we sold Trese, we photocopied it and sold it for 30 pesos. So that's less than $1.
Yeah.
We sold it at a friend's comic book shop because I thought, let's keep it, give it a low price point, just in case people don't like it, then they don't feel so bad about it. So we dropped off like 50 copies, 30 copies or 50 copies. And like a week later, we get a call from the comic book store and said, "You've sold out. Can you bring more copies?" And we said, "Okay, so let's just photocopy 30 more." and we just started to get that call weekly. So it was great to just get that feedback again from people that they were liking what we were doing.
Wow, that is just so pure and so beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So you're kind of becoming this superstar. Trese's out there, and Kajo, and just that commitment, of friendship, and doing this together. That's so beautiful. I love that. So yeah, you're becoming successful, but you're still working for this ad agency, but you leave the Philippines. You're now working with Lego, which is amazing. So you're still doing that, and you now have it at Netflix. And I know we can't talk about that, but when it does happen, we would love to have you back on to talk further in that regard. But can we just talk about still you're still writing Trese? It's now carried by some amazing publishers out there. You're not having to make these photocopies, and you've got someone else kind of help handling that, and you've retooled it. Let's just talk about that, and just the future of Trese in the comic book, and then just that difference now, transitioning from working in the Philippines with Kajo there, but then now you're in Denmark. How is that creating Trese and just still developing this property into this amazing entity that it's now becoming, and this love you're getting, this outpouring of love, because we can see it, and just from this this brief conversation and hearing you talk, I love you, man. I see the beauty and just the love for our people and the culture and the representation. It's something when you're as a fan of this medium, you want to support the people that really have that passion, and you have that. And again, thank you. So can you tell us further with what's happening with Lego and Trese and that transition from Philippines to Denmark?
Yep. The work method with Kajo hasn't changed. Funnily enough, the way me and Kajo work is we've mostly really just worked on through text messages and email. Rarely do we sit down and talk about things. I mean, that was one of his guiding principles when we started this. He said, "Give me a script, I'm going to draw it. So you take care of the story, I take care of the art." That was the simple division of labor there. And the only time we used to get to talk was when we were at a comic convention. So when we would be sitting there waiting for people to come to pass by, we would he would suddenly say, "What if we do this?" And I go, "Okay, that sounds interesting." And I just, take note of it. Now that I'm in Denmark, I would get a text message at 3 a.m. because it's already afternoon in Manila, and he would say, "Oh, I thought of this." So it's an ongoing conversation as far as what to do with Trese. I moved here 5 years ago because that was the time my kid was born. And I saw an opportunity. Other Filipinos actually got fellow friends from the advertising industry got into the advertising agency of Lego. So that's where we all work. And I tried out for a year. took me a year of pitching myself until finally I got in. So we're part of the team that makes the commercials and the stuff you probably see on Facebook and Instagram talking about Lego. So yeah, that's what we do, and yes, we do get to play with the toys 2 years in advance. So we get to see all of the fun stuff, and it's great because especially here in Denmark, then it just made sense that it's a good place to raise a kid. Whatever happens, again, going back to my story about advertising in the Philippines, it's an OT culture. It's an overtime culture, right? So here, at 4 p.m. work stops. So it's just, a great blessing to us as new parents to be able to come home and spend that time with our kid, because back in Manila, we would get home really late and our kid would already be asleep, or he's not sleeping because he's waiting for his mommy to come home, right? So there, and but me being here and Kajo being there, and even Kajo moved out of Manila. He moved to Davao with the family. So yes, it's now interesting. Ask me again in a year, but it feels like me and Kajo are struggling to write about Manila when we're not in Manila. Or maybe now we have this, I don't know, this nostalgic, lens that we look through when we create the next Trese story. But again, with Kajo being in Davao, I think he is now also in a more I would say relaxed environment, not as hectic as being in Manila, where you're usually stuck for hours in traffic. And you see it in his artwork. You see, if you compare Kajo from that, 2005 with only 1 hour to draw something with a sandwich in the other hand, and take a look at how he redrew it now that he's just devoted more time and energy into each page, it's, and to think I tried to stop him from doing it. When we decided to do the Indiegogo project, Kajo said, he told me, I will redraw the first issue. And I said, don't do a George Lucas. You don't need to digitally remaster. You don't need Jabba the Hutt there. Let's not do that. But he did not. I mean, thankfully, it didn't turn out to be a George Lucas. It turned out to be a Kajo Baldisimo in its best way possible. It's Kajo 2.0 or 3.0. And yeah, he spends a bit more time on each page, but it comes out fantastic. Which became even more important when Ablaze, our US publisher, picked us up, and I guess it was also that thinking of like, oh, more people are now going to see our work. We need to dress up. We need to we need to put on our best. We need to put our best foot forward. And that's what happened. He redrew what the issue you guys probably got is the Ablaze edition, and he redrew that. So that's all brand new artwork. And one of the things we also realized when we look back was that we never took the time to explain to readers what is a nuno, what is a tikbalang, in some American comic books, suddenly you would have a caption saying, "A nuno is a creature from under." It would suddenly have this explanation there, right? And it was because we realized, unconsciously, we were thinking this is going to be read by Pinoys. We don't need to explain this. Everyone grew up with this. But now that we knew that we were going to be read by a brand new audience who did not grow up in the same context as we did, then that's why we started to put in the journal entries to kind of, and we are living in a day and age when you can easily Google something that you don't understand. But yeah, so we put in the journal entries just to also give it that added flavor to anyone reading the book and doesn't want to be bothered with like checking what are these strange creatures.
Give them
But
what they
yeah,
need.
yeah. But yeah, I think I think we've as you might know, we still released we released a new book last year. So yeah, I mean the dialogue with Kajo is ongoing, and we hope to keep up this momentum. It's that whole we're still trying to carve out that 1 hour a day. It seems more difficult these days, but we try.
I love it. And I'm sure you're in demand now with the success. Are you weighing that as well? Like you love your job with Lego, and I'm sure, but here's now Trese becoming so popular. Has there been discussion or conversation with this success to maybe pursue another project or do other projects? Is that in there?
No, not. I think most especially when there were other projects me and Kajo tried to do or tried to kick off. We got to do one issue of this and one issue of that, and somehow we just kept coming back to Trese. And I think especially now that we have started our relationship with Ablaze and getting the global distribution, I think that's where our energies are at right now. So he is remastering the artwork, and I'm adding the journal entries. But for the Philippines, so one of the things we did was we kept Philippine rights. We kept Philippine rights because we wanted the price of the comic book to remain affordable to Filipino readers. Because now, and true enough, the local comic book stores ordered the Ablaze edition. So the moment it hits Philippines, it's now like 10 times the price of our Philippine version, right? But we are so thankful that our longtime readers still bought the US edition, even though they already have the Pinoy edition. So I think the big focus is still on Trese and finishing the storylines. So yeah, I think before we can move on to anything else, I think we will finish telling the tale of Trese first.
Love it.
I think it's such a great, you've tried out so many things, and then the one that really got notice is the one that was such a passion project, from a script that you wrote for yourself, being drawn on a lunch break just because he needed an outlet for creative expression. And I think that sincerity really, really shines through. So I'm excited to see where the story goes.
Thank you.
So I guess that brings us to our last big question that we have as part of the Nerds of Color. And we always like to ask, what is, this is our nerd check. What are you nerdy about? What could you give a TED talk about? And in your area of nerd expertise?
I guess the obvious answer would be comics, of course, would be the obvious answer. But I think I would love to talk. I mean, what I love talking about lately is how do you find inspiration in the everyday? How do you find, how do you, as far, and inspiration in terms of, I mean, obviously it's inspiration for storytelling is the more obvious thing, but I think the same principles can be used for just finding inspiration for whatever work you might have. And it's really more about, looking at your everyday activities and looking at it from a different point of view, and just see why that typical feeling past that ordinary street corner is actually, that there's actually something magical around those moments and those objects.
Beautiful. Well, wow, Budjette, this has been amazing. I love your energy, your soul, your vibe. I would love to have you back once Trese is out, and you can talk a little bit more about the connection from the comic and the animated series. And as we've kind of discussed, I'd love to have Jay Oliver, and I would love to talk to Kajo and get his side, because I just think that's such a beautiful relationship that you two have, and in creating this amazing project in Trese. Salamat po. We really appreciate you. Before we sign off and let you go, can you tell the people, especially for our audio listeners, how they can reach out to you? I'll have the information in the description below, but just how they can reach out to you online, your social networking, anything like that.
Yep. The latest news about Trese, I guess, can be found on our Facebook page. So that's facebook.com/Trese Comics. I'm also on Instagram, which is where Kuya P found me, which is just, Budjette is, at Budjette is where you'll find me. And if you follow, especially on the Facebook page, be prepared to get spammed with news, not just news about Trese, but I also use the Facebook page as a place to announce or like to share every time I see an article about Filipino folklore or Filipino mythology, whether it's research or new comic books or new books. Yeah, so I love to share it there, because a lot of our readers just ask about, where do you get your ideas? So I just keep sharing with everyone else, every time a new article or a novel comes out that has a little bit about our culture, I just love to share it.
Well, we absolutely love that. And we've been talking amongst ourselves. We can't wait to have you on, and also just everything mythology, Philippine mythology, history stuff. Yes, we're so thankful for that. So thank you for sharing that material. It's amazing. We appreciate it. Salamat po. Thank you so much. We're going to now talk about you a little bit to close out the show, but this has been beautiful, Budjette, and thank you for your time. And we'd love to have you back as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was so much fun. Yes, it was an unexpected trip down memory lane.
We really appreciate it. Thank you. Boom. There you go. Budjette Tan, Trese, coming soon to Netflix, but go check out the comics. They're amazing. Ablaze is the publisher that is bringing out these remastered editions with amazing art by Kajo. I'm not even going to try to say his last name, but just brilliant work. And as you can see, they love what they're doing, and it's so pure. Ladies, what do y'all think?
I love him. I'm so loved. Wonderful. It was so cool hearing about just where he comes from with the crossroads of culture and experiencing television at a young age. The crossroads of culture through television at a young age. And just his inspiration from the Western comics. And then again, something that we always hit hard, the ShoPowSho, is how important representation is, and how representation matters, and how seeing Filipinos in the industry is what inspired him to keep going and to do what he loved. So you had to tap that again. Representation matters. And now look at him, like he is that representation for Filipinos in the comic industry. So that's beautiful.
Success couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. But
oh my God, yes.
On top of that, Trese is great. It's a great setup. It's a great story. It's got great characters, and you can see that struggle and all the things that they tried out that didn't work along the way led them to find an authentic way to present their talents. I think that's so great.
So beautiful. Yeah. Well said, Kat. Yeah. And how we kicked it off, can we get the Budjette Tan bio book film? Because it's such an amazing story of success. God. But he was possessed.
That haunted house. No, what?
Right. Oh my God.
Beautiful. So amazing. I just pure vibe, pure soul, and you said it well, Kat and Tina. I'm just in the afterglow now from a great one. Can't wait to have him back once the Netflix series is out. We can dig in more in regards to that, and we'll be well read further with some of the stories.
That's right.
I know
Shay Mitchell, hit us up. We're here.
So can't wait to get Kajo on. I would love to hear his side, because that's just an amazing friend. You are best friend forever. That was beautiful. And and we'll talk to Jay hopefully soon, who's the lead animation designer that they're working with on the Netflix series. Stay tuned. More Trese, more budget. Kajo, Jay, again, that was beautiful. Ladies, let them know how they can reach out to us, so that way we can find out who we should also bring on as well. What, the vibe, the soul, the energy that's just giving that great material.
You can follow me, Cataphoric, on Twitter or Instagram. Also TikTok. We've got a ShoPowSho TikTok. And if you want a little more behind the scenes, you can always follow our Patreon.
Yes.
I am Viva Valentina, and you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at viva.valentina, Instagram and TikTok. And I am also on Twitter and chess.com at Viva Valentina XO. So
yes, the chess bully. Love y'all, the Ates, Cataphoric, Viva Valentina. I am Kuya P, aka Patrick Michael Strange. You can follow me at Strange Since 1977, as well as at Temple East, here at the Nerds of Color, the home of the ShoPowSho, and of course at the NRW and at New Release Wednesday, where nerds rule the world. We love y'all. Mahakita salamat. Till the next episode, we will be here waiting to give y'all more of this Filipinx amazingness. All right, and stop Asian hate, because that's very important right now. It's a lot of drama in the world. Go hug your friends, hug your family, and show love. Love y'all. Mahakita salamat.
Mahakita din.
Yes.
Just so that I'm saying it right, it's ShoPowSho. ShoPowSho. It's the ShoPowSho. By the way, your opening credits just always leave me hungry. I hate you for your opening credits. I have to travel. What's that? 2 hours? Is it 3 hours? There's a Filipinos restaurant like that way. And they have the same layout as your opening. It's incredible. Denmark, US, it's the same Carinderia layout with all of the stuff, right? It's just, but yes, we have to travel that way for 3 hours just to eat it. So I am skipping the intro of your show the next time I watch. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yes, so I will talk about myself and at the ShoPowSho. I love that. It's so stupid to me. I just realized what it is. Hi, I'm Budjette Tan, the writer of Trese, and I will be at the ShoPowSho. See you there. Hi, I'm Budjette Tan, the writer of the comic book Trese, and I will be in the ShoPowSho. And my Filipino heritage is important to me because it has given me unique stories to share. It has given me the fantastic worlds and creatures that we can call our own, and that the moment we share it with the world, they are just completely blown away that they've never heard of all of these magical creatures and characters.